What's up, brand builders? Stephen Hurahan here on the Brand Master Podcast. And in this episode, I'm joined by Mr. Jacob Cass. Now, Jacob, as you may or may not know, is a friend of mine and we go way back. So this one is a little bit different. It's just a little bit of a chat about branding, brand strategy, the evolution of branding, and the journey that we've both been on to get to where we are today, the mistakes that we've made along the way, the challenges that we found out. So this one's a little bit more casual. It's a little bit more relaxed. But if you want to learn how to avoid the major challenges within the branding industry, if you're becoming a brand strategist, and if you want to learn what's in future for branding and the world of brand strategy as we move into Web3 and NFTs, then join us for this episode of the Brand Master Podcast, where we get a bit casual and just talk about where we've been and where we're going. Welcome to the Brand Master Podcast, a show specialized in helping branding professionals and entrepreneurs to build brands using strategy, psychology, and creative thinking. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brand Master Podcast. And doing something a little bit different this time around. I've got my good friend Jacob Cass with me. Whoever has been in and around branding or design over the last 10 years will probably know who Jacob Cass is. I've had him on the podcast before, and we go way back. Jacob, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks, mate. It's good to reconnect after
absolutely.
It's been a couple of weeks.
Yeah. We're having a chat earlier over the phone, just chewing the fat. But and that's where we came up with this idea for a chat. And yeah, it's just a little bit different, a little bit, you interviewing me interviewing you, and us generally having a chat. And I know that some of my listeners really enjoy that stuff where they're like a fly on the wall, talking to or listening to two different people talk about their journeys and how they got to where they got, the challenges that they faced along the way. And we've spoken about this, in different corners before, but I thought it would be a good place to kind of come and kind of reflect on where we've come and talk about those challenges, as I said before. So a lot of our listeners will know who you are and they'll have heard about your journey before, but plenty of them probably will have not as well. So why don't you kind of give us a bit of a background as to where you came from, where you started within the industry, how you got into the industry, and then how you found branding specifically, and even more specifically then brand strategy.
All right. No, good question. And I will keep this short, but condense in, I don't even know how many minutes, 15 years into a couple of minutes will be. Yeah,
you can waffle if you allow yourself to. So that'll be great.
Yes. So 2007 is when I first registered my business, which was called Just Creative Design at the time. So, just to give you a quick understanding. So who I am now, I'm a brand strategist. I'm a brand designer. I run a podcast myself, and I also run a community and a blog called Just Creative. So that's what I do now. But going back to 2007, what my business was back then was literally a blog. It was a way for me to document my studies at university. And that was when I got thrown into this world of blogging and branding. I didn't know at the time what I was doing, but I had this attraction to logo design and typography. I repelled from, art and drawing, but I knew that I loved logo design and typography. So that's where I focused my efforts. And I was writing about logo design all the time. And that got me into the world of branding. And that kind of evolved into becoming a brand identity designer. And then many moons later, into a brand strategist, when I came across folks like yourself and The Future and a ton of other strategists out there. And that's really the journey to now, a very condensed version. So logo designer, identity designer, strategist, and now I'm a business coach as well. So that's it in a nutshell. The many ups and downs along those ways, but I'm happy to jump into that. So what about yourself, Steve?
That was a really distilled version. I didn't expect it to be that distilled. So why don't we jump into a few of those challenges that you mentioned? I know that probably like me, there were a few key points along the road that made you reconsider what you were doing or how you were doing it. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about the challenges that you faced along the way?
Yeah, so there's always different challenges along the like at each stage of the journey, and it's only really in hindsight that you can realize that there are actually challenges. And you, at the time, you thought you were doing things the right way, and that was what your skill level was at the time, and you didn't know better. So, in particular, when I first started, I didn't have any systems or processes. You're trying to get your business sorted, trying to find your niche and your position in the market. I didn't even know what those things were back then. So it's no wonder it's a struggle when you really you're trying to figure that all out on your own. And to be honest, back then there was not many resources online about that at all. So it's all books and trying to learn from your lecturers and your teachers. So it's a bit of a different game now. There's too much information now. Who do you know who to trust and who to learn from, and who has the right solution and so forth. So the problem back then was, business problems. How do you position yourself? How do you send the right message? And how do you attract clients? So once you learned that and I got those systems in place, it's like, well, at that time I was focusing on brand identity with a focus on logo design. So I set up my niche in terms of logo design, and my positioning was all about logo design, and that kind of stemmed. I guess that was the top of my funnel, if you will. Which stemmed into brand identity and so forth. So the challenges then were business and attracting clients. And then, streamline that a couple of years forward. The clients was not an issue. It was too much work. It's like I had, it was, the positioning had to change because there was too much work and I couldn't fit it all in. So that was a good sign to raise rates and to learn something new and so forth. So and then, once I was aware of strategy or brand strategy and how deep branding actually goes, I realized I didn't know shit about branding or what I thought, because there's so many different facets, and that's easy to say in hindsight, but there's so many different lenses that you can look through brand from. And I see even more and more every week. The more people I interview, the more people I speak to, there's just so many different ways that you can approach brand, whether it be, from comms or, to the customer or operations or, the business. There's so many different ways. So in a nutshell, just to summarize, it was business in the beginning, then it was positioning, and then it was like, well, how do you sell strategy? How do you talk about strategy? How do you talk about communicate the value of strategy? So that was some of the issues that I've faced along the way, since 2007.
Yeah. And I remember having a chat with Christo, just name dropping there. And he said the same thing. So he said, that in the beginning, he didn't know what branding was, but he was building relationships. He was getting out there, making connections, and, treating people the right way, in a way that, people would want to, interact with him again. So, that was, going back to what you said before, not knowing what branding was, kind of, we all do on a base level, and we can all relate to, doing things the right way. And this kind of goes into our personal lives as well. If you nurture relationships, then you're going to get that back. It doesn't mean that you need to look at the ROI of, what you're going to get from a friend if you help them to move, or, it's just nurturing that relationship. And on a base level, that's what branding is. But the more you kind of dig into it, the more you start to understand the nuances of it, and, the terms, positioning, what that actually means. You mentioned before earlier about you had too much work. Now, there's probably a lot of listeners going, I would absolutely love that problem. How do you believe that came about to a point where you had too much work, and what were you doing to have too much work?
Yeah, good question. So this was earlier, probably mid 2010s. And my niche that I focused on was logo design. So I was cranking out logos while I was traveling the world. So it was like, I say too much work because I was only working 4 hours a day and traveling. So that was kind of, there's
Too
that
much work for a
there.
part-time nomad.
Yes, exactly. So that was that's the big asterisk on that one. But the reason for that was because I knew SEO very well. I was owning the SEO game in terms of logo design, and there was less competition at the time. These days, there's Canva and Fiverr and every man and their dog on the internet. When I was really owning the blogging space and the SEO game back then, and I was getting so many inquiries. Just the systems I had in place was I didn't talk to people on the phone. I was all like in a questionnaire. People filled out a form. I would email them back. I'd get a brief. I'd send them a logo, perhaps an identity. And that's what I did for a number of years. And it worked really well. But things changed. The marketplaces popped up. Design was getting commoditized. The value was being perceived to be less in terms of actual production work, I guess. And more people come into the space, and SEO was getting more difficult and more competitive. Algorithms were changing. So there were some of the problems that came about, but that worked at the time, right? So it was a good problem to have. And it was also a wake-up call to raise rates or implement raise rates or relook at your business in ways to improve profitability and your systems and everything. So
yeah, and we chatted offline about what should the theme of this be, and we settled on evolution. And really that is what has catapulted me to get up off my backside and kind of look at the landscape and the industry and analyze what has actually changed. Do you remember when that all started to happen, when those marketplaces came in and you noticed a change? Talk to me a little bit about that particular transition, the change in the marketplace.
It'd be hard to say the exact year, but the writing was on the wall from the beginning. There were marketplaces popping up. I don't know what was first, Upwork or Fiverr or something
Odesk.
like that.
Odesk was one of the originals, yeah.
And I was living that digital nomad life and that remote lifestyle, and I saw that as the future, right? If anyone's familiar with the 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss, like it just opens your mind to, it opens your mind to that, that possibility, that mindset that you can, just work X amount of time a day or a week or whatever it may be, and be comfortable with that, and live for a lifestyle, right? So you're working to live and not the other way around. And that was really key for me. But, it's really hard to say the exact time, but it's getting more and more commoditized even as we go on now. So designers, what used to work for them, especially print designers and, production designers and, people that have been working in that space, is getting increasingly more difficult to stand out and to communicate the value when savvy business owners can go to an online platform or hire someone very easily offshore to crank out something that they don't necessarily perceive as a high value piece of design or part of business, right? So that's kind of leads into where we are today now as strategists. And I'm not sure if you felt the same way, Steve, but when did you feel like this was a problem?
Yeah, it was. Again, like we have similar experiences in terms of noticing that change, and that change being kind of a catalyst for us both to sit back and say, well, the market is changing here. What was working before is not working now. And likewise, I had plenty of business. And I wasn't marketing myself. You obviously were playing the SEO game, and you were early to the party from that point of view, certainly within our space. And like I've said this to you before, I even remember, seeing your name pop up again and again and again. And I was like, who is this guy? He's stalking me. But yeah, I saw those changes and I probably didn't embrace it you know, I know I didn't embrace it. I know I didn't look at it and say, "Oh, this is the future." You know, from a positive point of view, it was more of a threat. It was a threat to me and my little world that I had built, the systems that I had built, because I could see that the systems that I had built and what my clients valued in the work that I was doing was decreasing. And, you know, if you know anything about fight or flight and your defensive reactions to things like that, that's a survival instinct to go, okay, the writing is on the wall here. I see danger down the road. I need to do things differently. And yeah, that sent me on a journey of discovery, because I wasn't exactly sure whether or not I was going to go all in on the freelance side of things, on the business side of things, or to go back to employment, because, you know, there was a lot about the agency world that I loved, you know, getting to work with, you know, with lots of different clients, with big clients, working within a team. You know, I really did like that, but I didn't have that autonomy. And that's a really big part of my personality. You know, that kind of drive and desire to be the best version of yourself. I'm you know, very into self-development and things like that. So yeah, when I felt that threat, you know, I had a choice, and it was one of those moments. It was kind of a crossroads. Do I go left back to the employment world where there's relative safety, but very much a glass ceiling and potentially lots of hours that you're unpaid for, you know, and not being able to dictate your own terms? Or do I go down this dark road that I don't know what's at the end of it? I don't know where it lies. And I know there's a lot of pain down that road. I know there's a lot of uncertainty. But I had the support of my wife, and you know, she encouraged me to kind of follow what I thought was the right decision. And that's where I went. And I threw myself into a lot of business courses, business programs, you know, working on myself. And at the same time, I was looking at how I could, and I was also looking at, you know, how I could take my skill set and do something completely different with it, not necessarily within the branding space. But I did zero in on branding as something that I really loved. You know, I started to tap inside myself and look at, you know, what I actually enjoyed doing, because I had come from a finance industry and a finance career where I didn't like it at all. And I had already made this change. And I was like, you know, do I make a change again? And if I did, what would I actually do that I liked? And I kept coming back to, well, I like what I do. I really like what I do. And specifically, I really like branding. I feel threatened by the industry. So yeah, that's when I really started to dig deep into, well, what within this industry is not overcrowded? What within this industry can I evolve? And that's when I started to read a lot of books about branding generally. And that's when brand strategy came up again and again and again. And it became this word that I became obsessed with. I read everything. I was obsessed with it. Anything that was remotely touching on it, which delved into neuroscience, you know, how the brain works, emotional intelligence, understanding humans, along with the classics like positioning by Al Rees and Jack Trout, you know, branding on Acre on branding, you know, all the classic books that really kind of opened the world and fed me what I wanted to know. And yeah, that led into this place of, okay, how do I start implementing this? How do I take the knowledge that I have up here and start implementing this in a structured way? And that was just a game of rinse and repeat, tests, see what works, see what doesn't. And, you know, I developed out this process, this framework that just got better and better. And I was like, this is great. And I started to notice my clients really enjoyed the the authoritative approach that I took. And it wasn't an authoritative approach from the point of view of you need to do this. It was more of, asking questions and getting them to think about things differently or change their perspective. Because not only was there an education gap within the industry itself from the likes of yourself and myself who are working in the design space without the knowledge of, in-depth branding or brand strategy, there was a massive education gap on the client side. And I just felt that it was this organic thing to slot into, to take it upon myself to go, well, not only am I going to provide a better service, I'm going to teach my clients why they actually need this. And yeah, it was just this organic evolution that, it's still going. I still have that appetite to kind of learn more and evolve my processes and things like that. But I definitely saw the benefit of stepping away from that commoditized marketplace and going in and filling this massive gap. And the gap is still huge, by the way. The gap is still huge when you consider what people think branding is and the danger that represents to them and their future success. Anybody who's in branding and they take it upon themselves to help their clients close that gap, there's a massive education gap there. Is that what you find as well? That you've, like, when you talk to clients, even at your level now, where you're getting clients who are a little bit more savvy than maybe the first time startup or first time solopreneur, are you finding that there's still a big education gap there that needs to be filled?
Well, let's put it this way: we've both been in the industry for over a decade or more, and we're still learning every single day. And there's so much we know and so much we don't know, and different lenses to look at. So education is 100% part of the process every time. And even folks like Marty Newmeyer, he says every single time he works with a new client, that's part of the process. And it's also an opportunity to show that you know your shit and that they can trust you, and that we will guide them along that process. And I literally just did a brand story video and a custom testimony video recording with some of my customers. And a lot of them mentioned, like, what did you enjoy about the process? And they often mentioned the education, right? We guided them through the process. So education is a huge part of it. So if you're not educated yourself, you're going to struggle in terms of how communicating your value, and that trust may not be communicated or may not be built up. You may not have that rapport, which makes it harder to, sell through strategy and your thinking as a strategist. And in hindsight, what I did before brand identity design, where I just used a questionnaire, I didn't even need to talk to them on the phone or anything. That process, that system worked very well for identity design. However, if you're trying to separate your thinking or strategy from your executional design pieces or any other touch points or whatever you do as a service, that is where education comes in. It's really, really paramount. Education is paramount, to answer your question. So 100%, the more you know, the more you can pass on, the more the client will trust you, and the more perceived value you have, which will make it easier for you to sell through your services as well. So I think that's a huge part of it.
Yeah. And I've definitely also experienced the same thing when I took a more educational approach to the work that I did. The connections that I had with my clients, it was just non-comparable compared to my approach when I used to focus purely on design. And you know this yourself, designers are a precious bunch. And, we tend to see the client as the enemy of good work. We are the ones with the skills. We know what looks good. We know what good design is. You don't know anything. Just get out of my way and let me produce some beautiful work for you. And that actually has the opposite effect. You end up going down a road of, no matter how beautiful the design is, no matter how on brief it is, you will come across plenty of problems if you do not take the time to involve your clients in the process and educate them on what you're doing and why you're doing it in that way and the value of the outcome of that. And if you're able to really first understand it yourself and then articulate it to your clients, you know, your perceived value from their eyes is exactly what you need in order to start raising your rates. Because if you just take the position that, well, my work is better than those on Fiverr or freelancer.com, then you're being a little bit ignorant to what's actually out there first and foremost, but also who you're serving. You're serving these people who are coming to you for help, and they don't necessarily understand the market. They don't necessarily understand what they really need. And if you have that information, if you have that education, and this is just my philosophy, it's your job to give them that information so that they can go away not only with a better outcome for their business and a better opportunity for success, but a better understanding of what they're doing and why they're doing it, so that they can go and make a success of their brand. And at the end of the day, that is your job as a branding professional, is to simply hold your client's hand and be their guide and arm them with the tools that you are able to arm them with, so that they can go out and make a success of their brand. So, it's definitely a philosophy that I initially adopted, but it's now become a bit of a mantra of mine in terms of the importance of education. And if you're able to embrace that and package up what you do and pass your knowledge on through that package, your value perception is going to skyrocket. And it's definitely what I've found. How did your processes change along the way? Because obviously, you went from doing these questionnaires and having very little client interaction to involving them in the process. How did your processes change from then to what they are now? What does that look like? And what was the difference that you saw in your client relationships?
Yeah, good question. So there was something you said earlier about structure. Education was number one, like knowing your shit so you can pass it on. And then number two is structure, knowing how to package, as you said, package up your services. And how you do that is first understanding the client's problem. And how you understand the client's problem is by asking the right questions. So first you have to learn a little bit about what questions to ask to uncover the right answers to help with your, selling your package, more or less. So to do that, the systems has to change, right? To get more information, you have to spend more time with the individual, right? Not just a questionnaire. So you get on the call and you have a conversation and you just ask questions, and they should be doing pretty much 80% of the talking. So understanding what their goals are, who they're trying to serve, what they're offering, how they do it, what makes them different, why should someone choose them? So big fundamental questions that clients often have a very hard time struggling. And I didn't ask many of these questions earlier in my career. And that was the difference, right? I wasn't truly solving their business problem. I was just cranking out, an identity for them. I don't want to say just, because it's a very important part. And I did that for many, many years. But when you realize how much more there is to growing a thriving brand, things have to change and you can go deeper. And when I say go deeper, it's understanding the root cause of what they're trying to solve and who for. And that's when the structure came into play. Well, how do you bring structure to these questions and the process and, getting the right output to help achieve their goals? So the structure changed, and how I created a structure was from taking courses like, Brandmaster Secrets, and I've taken probably 10 other courses. I've interviewed dozens and dozens of branding professionals, getting bits and pieces from all over the joint, and creating, borrowing. I always remember this metaphor about, you have a backpack on, you have tools in your backpack, and you grab them out when you need. And that's what is possible when you get information from multiple different sources and you put them into your backpack. And when you're like, oh, okay, well, that client has that problem, let me get this tool out, and then you work on it. So it's number one about education, and then structure in terms of interviewing them, understanding the problem, clarifying the problem, getting approval on that, and then selling through the solution to them. And if you've spent enough time with them to uncover that, you've already created that. You're bridging the gap for them. You paint the picture from where they are, the problem that they have, understanding the obstacle in the middle. What are we trying to overcome, and what's that magical place in the distance that we're trying to get to? So that visual metaphor of like bridging the gap, that's pretty much what we do as strategists, getting from A to B, overcoming that middle section. So the structure and the education is really what has changed in my career, going from questionnaires to spending more time and putting a more customized approach to their business problem, as well as their customer's problem. So I think now that I'm talking about it, I often overlooked the customer and the marketplace when I was working with clients in the past. So it wasn't really doing as much research, and it was purely just working to a brief that the client had provided, which may not necessarily be the right problem. And another metaphor to use is like a doctor or a mechanic. You're into a doctor's office. I have this problem. Well, they're not just going to give you a prescription. They're going to try to diagnose the problem, and then you give the prescription or whatever it may be. So that's what we should be doing as designers or strategists, listening more, clarifying the problem. So then we can put together a structured proposal or solution to their proposed solution to their problem. So that's my answer.
Yeah. It's funny as just as you made that reference to the doctor, it's what popped up in my head as well. And one of the biggest epiphanies that I had, when I started to go down the road of brand strategy, and offering this higher level service, was the way in which I transferred my understanding and value of those processes to my clients. In the beginning, I told them, you don't need a logo, you need a brand strategy. And of course, every entrepreneur, they have the same traits, and that is, they have these similar traits, which are these dominant entrepreneurial traits. And if you tell somebody who is educated and smart that, what they believe is completely wrong, and, they need to see things differently through your eyes, not to mention the individual personalities and their emotional triggers and things like that, that you kind of trip up along the way. If you simply confront somebody that what they've come to you asking for is incorrect, you come across as arrogant, you come across as not actually listening to your clients. But if you approach it from that point of view, that diagnosis point of view, and that empathy and understanding point of view, and this really taps into, the value that I found from reading books such as, Emotional Intelligence, and, the Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion by Robert Cialdini. These books all have an influence on how you deal with people, how you understand what they're going through. So you can not only apply it to your own personal life, you can apply it to your business. And, you pick up all these little things along the way by educating yourself in and around your space and what is applicable to your space. And what I found was that, I was triggering my clients. I was pushing them away by telling them that they needed something and not giving them that time, not giving them that understanding and that empathy. And, that is a core desire for every single person. As people, we want to be heard. We want to be understood. We want to know that the person listening to us has our best interests at heart, and that they are going to listen to the words that we say, rather than just reflecting, a cookie cutter solution or, shooting us down. So that empathy and that listening and that understanding was such a massive epiphany for me. And when I started to apply that and started to approach my clients from a curiosity point of view, from a diagnosis point of view, it had such a profound impact on those initial calls. Instead of repelling my clients, I was inviting them in. I was building, little relationships with these people, whether they did business with me or not. They walked away with a positive experience in that I had taken the time to listen to them. I asked questions about their business. I got them excited by asking things like, so where do you see yourself in the next 10 years? Getting them to really picture that vision in the future. And I think that diagnosis part is something that is really overlooked, certainly within the design space. Certainly going back to my processes and your processes and many other designers' processes in the past. I know that that's changing quite a bit now, because designers are becoming a lot more educated on the value of understanding your clients and the value of strategy as well. But that was a big one for me, that epiphany. And that also led into my sales process as well, asking the right questions and getting a balance between spending the time on the phone, giving them your time, giving them your empathy and your understanding, and then kind of guiding them to a place where they may not be looking at things in the right way. There is another perspective. There is a blind spot over here that they hadn't considered. Now you need to shine a light on that blind spot. And the blind spot that I'm talking about here is brand strategy and approaching their brand from a point of, it's not just this visual thing. But if you simply shine a light on that blind spot and say, here, look at that, you're missing that. You shouldn't be looking over there. You should be looking here. Then, you're not going to get the response that you want. If, on the other hand, you ask questions and you slowly turn their head by asking those questions, they're going to see that blind spot all on their own. And that is what you want. You want them to come to their own conclusion and their own epiphany, because if they do, it's their idea and not yours. And then you don't need to sell them anything. You just need to give them a path to follow what they have just learned, and they have just come to the conclusion of what they need. So that was a big one for me. And diagnosis really kind of paved the way for that. And just being curious, just really having this sense of curiosity about your client and what they want to do. And I guess that took me into workshops as well, and this collaborative environment where you go deep on those questions and you give your client the platform to get everything out, to get their ideas out, and really involve them in the process, so that at the end they're like, that's mine, that's my baby, I did that, I was there through the whole process. Have you found that the collaboration side of things and the workshopping side of things has helped in your processes?
Yeah, absolutely. So the key words you said there, like empathy, balance, and understanding, that was, in hindsight, looking back on my career, what the skills I lacked, those soft skills, knowing what questions to ask, knowing how to listen, and knowing how to diagnose and understand a problem and understand a person. That is what I lacked. So for anyone listening, it's like, well, take a look at yourself. How well do you know those skills? How good are your soft skills? How well can you understand people? How good are your questions? How many questions do you have off the top of your head, or do you have a cheat sheet? Those sorts of questions can help with that process and that collaborative effort. And as we're talking about workshops, that's really where this collaborative effort really comes to light, is in a workshop environment. And whether it be one person or 10 people, it's about having everyone's voice being heard, bringing their ideas to the table, having a discussion about it, getting everything out of the table, figuring out what's right, not what's right, but potential directions, things that aren't, perhaps aren't as strong. Just having a discussion about it, so you can get to the true essence of the problem or the brand, whatever the discussion may be. So I found the collaborative process to be fundamental to my process now, to get to that root cause, to diagnose the problem, to put together a customized proposal to help solve whatever that problem may be. So I'm not sure where you want to go with workshops, but collaboration is a huge part of bringing more value to the table, and versus just executing on, say, a design or a piece of production. So,
yeah, and I guess the point is that we're dealing with a moving target here. And we should never get comfortable that we have it all figured out. That we've got everything now. We're set for life. Ooh, absolutely not. Like with the framework that I use, it's been It's a great servant. It's a great tool, but you always need to be improving yourself. You always need to be advancing in your ideas and your philosophies. And, I guess that's something that I'm looking at evolving now in terms of, really kind of going down the approach of putting it all back to the client. We're here to serve the clients at the end of the day. We don't exist as a business unless those clients are there with those challenges. And if we put all of our focus into making sure that they walk away with the best outcome possible and the best experience, which really taps into brand experience, which is something that I'm a big proponent of designing specifically. They're going. You're serving your purpose, and you're building relationships, and you're sending people on their merry way with a great experience and their best chances of success. So it's what I love about what we do, is that we can be that guide. We can see these people that, and we've all been there before. Starting a business is it's scary. It's, you don't know, you can't see all the problems or the challenges in front of you, and to be able to, stand from the other side and be able to go back across and guide them, and for them to feel really connected to you after that, because they can see the journey that you've taken them on. And without your help, they'd have gotten lost in the woods, and who knows what have happened to them. That's the real the value that I get from what I do, and kind of evolving that process is something that I always want to do. And it is, as I said, evolving all the time. And that's how I see things going in the immediate future. And who knows what's beyond that? Where do you see where we're going at the moment? I know that you've got a lot of moving targets that you're looking at the moment, and we've never been in a time that's changing as fast as we are. You're looking at some stuff with NFTs and things like that. Where are things going in the world of Just Creative and Jacob Cass, and where do you see branding in the near and the distant future?
A couple of questions there, but before I get to that, there was something you kind of mentioned there about being a guide, and story brand, and that Donald Miller's story brand. I know it's one of your favorites, and you use that in parts of it in your course. I think that was another fundamental shift for me, like a paradigm shift. It was like positioning thinking about your customer as the hero and you as the guide. So it's all about them, and we guide them along that experience. And how you do that is part education, part structure, and part diagnosis, and all those things. I was talking about tools before, and we've mentioned a ton of books, in this podcast already. And it's about understanding so many different aspects of, psychology and business and empathy and, being a guide and story. Like, there's so many different aspects. And I think it's the knowledge of all these different topics is what makes a good brand strategist, because you get in all this information and you're distilling it and helping the customer or your client move in the direction that they want to go. So you're using all this knowledge to guide them to where they want to go, just to repeat it. So what's next was the other question. It's exciting. It's an exciting time. Brand strategy is trending. It is very popular, and it's no wonder, because designers are starting to feel the clinch, right? So, and everyone's becoming a strategist, and everyone's providing. Well, they have to shift, right? They can't just compete with the rest of the world anymore in terms of just doing design. There are people doing it, but it's getting increasingly more difficult, especially for students and people just coming out. Right? It's very challenging. So the future, I think this can tie into the future is like, well, Web3, it's here now. NFTs, the metaverse, cryptocurrency, and all that entails. That's kind of where things are going now. So there's a lot of opportunity there. I'm very excited about it. I have a project launching very soon. It's probably out by the time this goes live. So it's called The Forest. So any designers or strategists or creatives that are wanting to enter the Web3, go to the forest, which is thefo.rest. That's the domain. So thefo.rest. You can sign up there. And what the forest is all about is helping creatives enter Web3. So you can learn how to make money from NFTs. If you're not sure what that is, we guide you on that. So we have education, we have a community with folks like myself, and we have 10 other members who are part of this community that are heading it up. And we also have a pathway, a roadmap to build this over the number of years. So it's early days now, but it is for everyone. But this is what's coming. So it's the writing's on the wall, just like it was many years ago about strategy and design being commoditized. We're now entering Web3. There's the NFTs that you can tie to your work. That's a whole other topic, but that's what we're there for. And the metaverse, that's really exciting. Imagine walking into your own branded world or some other world in the future. It's already happening, but it's just going to get more and more as things go. So there's going to be chief metaverse officers in the future. It's crazy to think about, right? And we can be designing these worlds in a digital world. These immersive experiences, mixed reality, augmented reality. So there's a lot of buzzwords I'm mentioning here, but we're talking about the future now. And that's where things are going. So it's time to educate yourself. Are you into crypto? Do you know what NFTs are? Do you know how they work? Do you know the utilities behind them? Do you know the opportunities? Can you use them in your work? There's royalties that you can make from NFTs. So there's so much opportunity, and it's so new right now that people are kind of ignoring it and laughing it off. But in 5-10 years, it's just going to be normal, right? Just like the internet, when it first came out, it was like people laughed at it. Or when the first iPhone apps came out, like you literally could you could light a candle on it and blow it out. Like that's how crappy the utilities of the apps were. But now it's so part of our everyday life. That's what NFTs are right now. It's here. We don't know how to use them properly yet, but we're learning every day. But they're going to be here to stay, as well as crypto. So that's kind of where I've been spending some time learning and educating myself to empower other creatives to enter that space. And that's really my purpose, is to empower creatives to do what they love. And there's many different ways to do that, but this is the new opportunity. Love staying on the edge of, digital innovation. So that's kind of where I'm going. I'm also doing brand strategy for clients. I run a blog, I run a branding podcast, and I run a community for creatives as well. So keeping busy. But that's where I'm spending time now.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. There must be 2 or 3 of you with everything that you've got on your plate, and yeah, I love that you're, and this is what we went back to before, that you're keeping yourself educated in terms of strategy. What I love about strategy is that no matter what evolves in front of us, if you have those tools, then you're going to be relevant, because at the end of the day, it's about asking the right questions. It's about understanding the customer, because there is always a customer, there is always a consumer at the end of any business or any brand, and it's always about understanding them first and finding a way to connect a business or a brand with those people, no matter what happens in the future with metaverse or anything like that. And yeah, really kind of embracing that education bridge is something that I'm a big proponent of, and I'm going to be looking at that in a lot more detail towards the end of the year. And coaching is something that's been on the radar for me for quite a while, and something that I'll be introducing this year at some stage. So I'm looking forward to that. But yeah, it's been good chatting, man. It's been good catching up, and I think the last time we did it, we were in a bar and COVID rules were applying, and I was getting into trouble for dancing because we weren't allowed to dance. So it's good to do it in a more relaxed environment. But
totally.
But we'll have to do it again sometime. But yeah, look, I'll leave the all of the things that we spoke about in the show notes. Before I go, tell us what you're reading right now.
I'm just about to start the Win Without Pitching manifesto. So I just finished Hero on a Mission by Donald Miller, which is his latest book. And we have a book club actually. And we voted on, it's funny you ask this, we voted on what book to read next. And there was 3 books: Atomic Habits by James Clear. There was the Win Without Pitching manifesto by Blair Enns. And then there was Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And we all voted. And it was even Stevens with, Never Win Without Pitching and the James Clear's book. And then in between, it was Never Split the Difference. So it was like 50-50 votes. And then the book Never Split the Difference in the middle. I'm like, well, I can't split the difference here. But we can read both books, right? So we're reading both. Books now.
The beauty about Blair Enns' manifesto is that it's a manifesto. It's pretty short. You knock it out. I think I knocked it out on a drive from Newcastle to Sydney, which is about 2 hours. And I was done. I was like, that was the most productive 2-hour drive of my life. Never Split the Difference is a great book as well. Obviously, the world of negotiating with hostages is very different to negotiating with clients, but there's a lot of principles in there that are really, really valuable. I'm kind of diving into the science world at the moment, and it's been great for me in understanding a lot more the happy brain. I know that's not the full title, but it talks about all the chemicals in our body when they're released and why they're released, and how that's how that taps into our animal instincts that have been with us for millions of years. And I'm reading Emotional Intelligence as well, which is a really, really good book, and it's all about the emotional brain, the amygdala, and how we get hijacked. And anybody who has lost their temper before can relate to that. So pretty much everybody. But it's great because like these books arm you with tools, not just for your business but for life as well. So I'll have to get in on the action with that book club.
So, Steve, tell me what chemicals are released when you have a whiskey?
Happy chemicals, lots of them. Dancing chemicals. I just, I
could attest to that.
My feet just start moving on their own, as you know. So yeah, I know that the rules have been lifted now, so we can dance. So next time we go out, I'll actually be able to flex my dancing muscles. So you'll be able to see.
Maybe it was a good thing. Maybe it was a good thing.
I've got some moves in my locker, man. I'll have to show them. I'll have to show them to you. But mate, great chatting to you, and we'll do it again before too long. And good luck with all the stuff coming up in the NFTs. I'll definitely be jumping onto that to see what you're doing.
Thank you, mate. Always a pleasure.
All right,
thanks,
mate.
Guys.
Chat to you soon.
We really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks so much for listening. If you want to learn more brand strategy techniques to level up your skills, make sure you check out brandmasteracademy.com. There's plenty of free resources and premium content for you to download and get you going. If you'd like to join our Facebook group full of like-minded brand strategists, all learning from each other, then find us by searching for the Brand Strategy Community, where you can find exclusive content for members as well. If you enjoyed this content, please be sure to give us an honest review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listened, and make sure you tune in for the next episode of the Brandmaster Podcast.